was having severe anxiety walking in every day, and having to turn on my monitor was just a hard task for me. Like my last case that I worked had 25 terabytes of child abuse material. The worst case I ever worked on was a guy named Matthew Falder. He goes by Evil Mind. He was wanted for 5 years by NCA, which is equivalent to the FBI in the UK. 5 years he was on the dark web, and he was getting girls to kill themselves.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Adaptive Leaders Podcast. This is a really good episode. I am super excited for you guys to listen to this. We've got a special guest today. He is an Army veteran of 11 years, background in human intelligence and counterintelligence. He's worked with Homeland Security and other 3- and 5-letter agencies that you may have heard of. He is the founder and CEO of the Sentinel Foundation, and he is the founder of Alcohol Armor. He's a multi-business entrepreneur, and he owns a nonprofit foundation that is combating human trafficking. Overall, Glenn Devitt. The savages that created Alcohol Armor believe that if used properly, all consumers will be armored up against those terrible morning afters. They're so confident in these claims that if it does not work for you, they have a money-back guarantee. Go to alcoholarmor.com. That's alcoholarmor.com. When I researched a few other podcasts that you're on, you kind of glaze over like your high school, your adolescence. What were you like back then?
Man, I was, Yeah.
Active?
In high school, I played ice hockey growing up, and then, I came from a, lower middle class family, and we switched over to soccer because it's just traveling hockey is so expensive.
Mhm.
And so played soccer pretty much my whole life. I ref soccer, I coached soccer. And then in high school, it was soccer, wrestling, and tennis and chess were my 3 programs that I was a part of. And I was never really the best at any of one. I was just could be okay, could get by for them. And so I always felt like I failed at everything I did. All the way up until probably like 21 years old, 22 years old, I thought I couldn't be successful at anything. I just had so much failure, just like the little things, always like not living out to my true potential that I knew I could. For it, but it turns out, they say fail early and fail often. I think that was one of my greatest things that happened to me is I learned from my failures.
Yeah.
And I start getting better, and then I start not failing, and I start just always winning at things. And so, but I'm always on the because I failed so often was like I'm always now looking of like, all right, where am I going to slip up? How am I going to slip up? And where is that failure going to come? Or what gives you the greatest chance at failure right now that I'm doing?
That attribute of critical thinking, what you're expressing right now, would you say that came from chess?
Oh man, yeah, it's one of the greatest things my dad ever did. I think he started teaching me how to play chess probably at like age 4, and he beat my ass like every day. Like he had no mercy on me. He beat me all the way up until I was 13. I lost every single game until I was 13, and then he's never beaten me since.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was one of those things.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like I would keep learning little by little, and then I wish I love the board game. I try playing mobile here and there, but I really do I have really high end. Well, I travel the world, so I try to buy chess sets or chess pieces from like all over the world, and still try to I try to teach my kids. My youngest is 5, and I think actually she's probably the one that's going to pick it up.
Yeah.
Like she'll just bring my chessboard, we'll play on the floor, and kind of start teaching her the basic principles for it. So
That's powerful, man. Yeah,
yeah,
that's really
I
interesting.
mean, with chess, the thing about it is it teaches you to look at yourself that what you can do offensively and what potentially they could do to you. So that critical thinking, I think, is one of the biggest things that kids and people today don't get. They don't think about how is this person going to hurt me? How is this person going to help me? And I do that every time I meet somebody. Like, what's the value prop
Mhm.
of this individual in my life? Are they going to suck my energy or are they going to increase my energy?
Yeah, man. So that ability to reason, it sounds like it was instilled in you at a young age through that game,
Yeah.
chess, right?
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Good and bad. There's always some bad in that where you're
Mhm.
just overthinking and over criticism. And it didn't help that I worked intelligence for 12 plus years,
Mhm.
which is all critical thinking and analyzing the enemy. But I think that's what really helped me
Mhm.
for it. But then you have to try to turn it off and make sure you're not manipulating certain people in your life. Because once you start understanding your strengths and weaknesses of people, then you'll start trying to say of like, well, how can I use them or how are they beneficial? And so you have to find that moral balance for sure.
Yeah, man. So that's an interesting thought that I want to ask you about. What is the difference between manipulation and influence?
Is there?
Mm.
Right? I mean, that's what you're doing. If you're influencing, you're manipulating because by influencing and now you're influencing to what you want, right? Like, but you could also influence into things that they need. It depends. It really depends on the situation.
Mhm,
They kind of go hand in hand. I don't think all influencing is all manipulation, but I think a lot of what you're trying to influence is usually for your self benefit.
mhm.
You know, a lot of things that we do are for our own self preservation.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've heard before that the nuance between manipulation and influence. The difference between manipulation and influence is influencing others is or say manipulating others is when you're trying to gain something at their expense or in an underhand way. Influence is when you are changing or trying to help another person or influence another person, not at their expense. That
Yeah.
makes sense. So not in a way where you're not playing a shadow game that they don't realize that you're playing, right? Back of your head, I'm going to use this person. They're going to do something for me and it's going to unlock X, Y, and Z. They don't know that game. That's because that's going on in your head. But if you see somebody in front of you that you truly care about, in this example, you're a parent, right? You want to influence your kids to have healthy eating habits. You want to influence your kid, and you're going to use every tactic available, but not in an underhand way. It's very overt.
But it's for your own gain.
Is it?
I mean, for influence my kid is because I'm doing what I want them to do, right? For because I think that is what's best for them, right? But I think you're right. I don't. It's tough to say that like, all manipulation is influence, but I think a lot of it is. Like if you look at an influencer
Yeah,
that are putting out their self tips, they're also getting paid. They're selling shirts.
that's
They're
true.
putting products in front of you. So
Yep. Yeah.
there is a balance of it. Do I think all influence is wrong? No. I mean, you look at religion. Religion is influencing people to live a good life because of this reasons, right? So yeah, I think there's just a balance between the manipulation and influence, and I think that influence is supposed to be good, but I think it does line with manipulation. Like I worked human intelligence.
Yeah.
Human intelligence is purely all manipulation.
Mhm.
It's I have to get said individual that has placement and access to something I want US government says want,
Mhm.
right? And so then I have to get them to do it with paying them or not paying them basically anything
Mhm.
to risk their life. So it's all manipulation, right?
Yeah.
Love of country, and then they have these different, reasons to manipulate them. I mean, so it's a tough game for
Yeah.
sure.
And so that you're alluding to the background that you have. So high school, you signed up to be in the army at a pretty young age, right?
Oh, day after 9/11.
Okay.
Yeah, I watched it, towers get hit by the planes, and I wasn't even sure what I was gonna do in life. Thought maybe police officer, firefighter. Everyone in Philly is like police, firefighter, military. Like majority is like a very blue collar. And so I was probably gonna go that route. Anything with a gun, I thought like I always was fascinated with guns, cowboys, Indians, things like that. And so, but then when 9/11 hit, I just knew. I went to the recruiter the next day and, they were like, "Oh, you're 17, so your mom has to sign up." My mom was not having it. She was like, "Hell no, you're not
Yeah.
going. You're not doing that. You're gonna do what I say." So I'm like, "Okay, that's fine." And so the day I turned 18, I signed up. It was, like, right when I was graduating from high school, so I signed up that day. And, like, I would suggest I give advice to anybody out there, like, if you're gonna sign up to military, find somebody that's been in the military because recruiters will manipulate you.
Yeah, they
Right?
will.
Like,
Very
they will
overtly.
manipulate. I
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, I wanna be an Army Ranger,
Mm.
Airborne Ranger, that's it." He's like, "Yeah, sure. You're gonna be reserve and you're gonna do chemical, but you'll be able to go to Ranger school." And so, like, just being dumb, like, "Yeah, I'll take anything." I had a
What
high
about the
score
sign-on
too.
bonus? What about the sign-on bonus?
At that point in time, there wasn't
Oh,
anything.
there was
There was no it was like, yeah, like, this was, like, fresh. And so, I signed up for, like, reserve thing,
Mhm.
chemical specialist, and then I'm going off to college because I had bullshit scholarship and, wasn't a big one, but my parents really want me to go, so I'm gonna go become an officer then. I'll go there, sign up, and then I'm like, "I gotta get out." Once I talked to one person in the military, they're like, "Reserve chemi," they're like, "You're not going to Ranger school, buddy." I'm like, I got duped. So I'm like, I'm gonna switch to infantry. So they're like, yeah, your best bet is to switch from reserve, go to National Guard, finish it's a called simultaneous program. It's like SMP,
Mhm.
where you'll be Army infantry and you'll go through ROTC, you become an officer in the infantry, and you'll be able to go to Ranger contract. So I'm like, oh, that's not a bad path. It was best of both worlds. Well, I'll get my degree and do this. And so I had to take that. It took like 6 months to switch. So I then left for basic training, and it's called OSINT, where it's basically infantry school. It's 16 weeks long. basic and the AIT all at once. So I did that, became National Guard infantry, and I maintained the ROTC program. And this is about like March 2003 now. And while I was going through the basic and everything, I was like, I want to switch to active duty. I want out of this contract. I see all these guys going to Ranger. I'm like, sign me up. Like, I don't want to go back to college. And they're like, you can't do it. They're like, when you go back to your unit, you can switch. So I got back to my unit. You walk in and like, it was all dudes in the fraternity, and then it was guys like in their 60s. I was like, these dudes are gonna get me killed if I could war with them. Like, the dude's giving me an IV while he's smoking cigarettes. I'm like, this is like not gonna end well. I'm like, I do not want to. Now, I'm not saying this is all National Guard. This was just my National Guard unit,
That's
and
hilarious.
yeah, I was like, it was either cokeheads or that.
Yeah.
Like people crazy. I'm like, I don't want to be around this. And so finally, I get this, and then Iraq kicks off. So I spent like 6 months in my unit. Iraq kicks off. And I'm thinking, Desert Storm, it's gonna be over in like a month. I'm not gonna get to play war. I'm thinking Afghanistan is gonna end. I could have been further from the truth.
Yeah.
I had no idea we are gonna be at war for the next 20 years. And so I finally got to switch to active duty for that way. But they were like, hey, if you're gonna go infantry, you're only going to Fort Riley, Kansas. And I was a city boy. I was like, I'm not going to Kansas. And they're like, "Well, you can switch over to counterintelligence." I think I'm like, "What is counterintelligence?" You couldn't even really Google a lot about it. Just to be a counterintelligence special agent, you're gonna work kind of human intelligence, spy stuff. Like they didn't even know, recruiters didn't even know because I had a pretty high ASVAB and a certain score that you need to get into it.
What's
And
ASVAB?
ASVAB is the test you take to get in. Like you score a 20 on your ASVAB, you're going infantry.
Okay.
You're
Yeah.
like, you're down there.
Yeah.
And so in the infantry world, you either get guys that like that's all they could get,
Uh,
or you get the guys that are actually really smart and want to be on the front lines. It's really a good balance. It's just some people aren't book smart. It's
mhm.
just it is what it is. It's just all like a SAT type test.
Like memorization type of stuff.
Yeah, it's like math, it's engineering, it's all these different things, and so you get different levels, and so to work intelligence, there's certain scores like an ST, GT, things that have to be above 110. They have to be pretty high,
Mhm.
and so I had high scores in all the critical thinking as we go back to the chess side,
Mhm.
right? I had really high scores in this side, and they're like, "So you're gonna go counterintel or Fort Riley, Kansas?" So I was like, "All right, I'll go Kansas," because I always knew I could go Green Beret or I could go other routes if I wanted to down the line. And so yeah, I did. I signed up, went to counterintelligence school, passed that.
That with that background, you have human intelligence, counterintelligence. At this stage, you were
Yeah, only like a year.
okay. So you're a year in.
Yeah, like a year and a half. Like I was, even though I was a reclass, I was like an E3 reclass
Mhm.
as they brought it. It took about a year to go through, so maybe like 2 years. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so about 2 years. And then at what point did you start getting into forensic?
Mobile forensics, I got in originally back in 2005.
Mhm.
So when I got to my unit in Hawaii, I actually just got put back to an infantry unit
Mhm.
where they put you. It was the first time with Stryker Brigade where they took counterintelligence, human intelligence personnel, and they embedded them with the infantry units. And so you're just a part of the team down there. And during that, we went through a course called Blackbird, and we have a full set of all like how to do mobile forensics. So I've been doing mobile forensics for a long time. This is back like you had these bricks, you plug the phone in, dumps the data. It's like old school.
You did three rotations in the army.
I did 15 months in Iraq, and then I did a deployment to Afghanistan.
Okay. Was there a point, like a defining moment, where you were like, "I'm gonna be in the army for like 10 years"? Does it every
I
4 years?
kept going on and
Uh-huh.
going through my career, right? Like I
Yeah.
kept getting promoted. I got even though I got demoted at one point, and I still made E6 in 4 years. So technically, I think it's the fastest you can make E6 with the staff sergeant
Uh,
with the demotion. And so, like, I was an idiot, really terrible at garrison, great in the war, like yeah, like, and yeah, it was a great night. It was like the day I graduated from counterintelligence school. I had I don't know, I got underage drinking. It was like a week before my 21st
mm,
birthday. Resistant arrest, a bunch of other shit. Like it was a hell of a night. And so it got dropped in the civilian side, but the military still doesn't care. Like
right.
double jeopardy. So they got me, demoted me. Instead of going to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, I was supposed to go to like third group Fort Bragg. I had like a and to be support for Green Berets back in '05, and they were like, because I got demoted, they were like, you lose your airborne orders 'cause I had to sit by. They're like, well, we're gonna send you to Hawaii. I'm like, "You're gonna send me to Hawaii?" I'm like, "You're like, yeah." I'm like, "That's the most that's like the best emotion I've ever had." Like, instead of North Carolina, I'm going to Hawaii, right? Yeah, I lose my airborne orders, but I'm 21 now, I'm moving to Hawaii. I'm like, "Deal."
Done.
Like, yeah, yeah.
Take it.
So, but going through and then like messing up like that, I was so mad. Even though it was like one rank, it was like E3 to E2. I was so mad, but it motivated me, and so I got waiver after waiver, so it was like E4, E5, E6 at an infantry unit, so I was getting infantry promotions as an intel guy. It just busted my tail. Your question was like, how long I had planned to stay in. It was more of just getting to the next gate check. I didn't know, and I think the military is you use it to either, make it a career where you're gonna be sergeant major, you're gonna be a general, like go for the top ranks. Use it to go into the special operation where you can have the most fun and do a lot of crazy things, or you use it to build your resume, right? Use it to build your resume to get out for it. And for me, and so I didn't care about retirement. I didn't care about staying in for 20 years and collecting a small paycheck for the rest of my life. I was like, I always knew that I'm going to be talented in anything I do, and I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and get out there. So I never thought of like the retirement. I didn't care for it. So
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. So when you say you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, you stayed in the army for a decade, right? The structure, the level of discipline necessary to be in the army for that long, and then when I think about the attributes of the average successful entrepreneur, which is like no disdain for authority, all
I'm
that.
I'm unemployable.
Yeah.
Like I had to
Yeah.
start my companies because if they get there, I spent that time in the military. It's like I can't work for anybody. Like I know that. Like
Yeah.
I tried doing that when I got out, and I was like, I'm better than him. Like
Right.
it's not. And maybe it comes off of cocky, but it's more of
Mm.
like I don't like making other people money, and I did it. I made other people a lot of money. I had multiple people try buying a service company I had because I realized they were trying to buy me to then make them more money.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So you always kind of had that skill set. How did you keep that under wraps in the army?
Well, I was still doing it in the army, and so because I mean,
Mm.
you're, like, on welfare while you're in the army, like, it
Mm.
doesn't like, you're not living this, like, great, healthy life. Yeah, you have a house that's paid for, and you have food on the table, but you feel any extra activity, you're gonna need to, like, get a little side hustle,
Yeah.
or,
Oh, and
or have, your significant other work a job or something like that, and for me, I wouldn't because of my kids, I wanted my wife to stay at home. So, I saw that thing on Craigslist where a guy turned, like, a rubber band into a house.
yeah.
Type thing, so I legit did it. I had, like, an old Kodiak TV that I turned from that into, like, a Ford Bronco.
Oh, damn.
So, like, I had this, like, hustle that was going through, and I've had, like, all these little side gigs
Mhm.
that I was hustling, and I always walked around, and I always had an invention book in my car. It
Mm.
was always, like, drawing ideas out or principles or, things I thought that markets needed,
Mhm.
and I had, like, 3 ideas that I had drawn out years before they came out to the market, and I just didn't follow through with them. And it's because I didn't know how. I always was hesitant. I always had excuses. I didn't have the money. I didn't have the means for it. So I was like, I'm gonna get the money so that I can execute on the means of what, for this
Yeah.
idea and this concept. So that hustle was always inside of me for it. It's just, I also though feel like I'm passionate about selfless service, where it's like giving back, and being an entrepreneur, my motivation wasn't money. Like, I do like nice things, like, I wanna have yachts, and I also wanna rescue kids. Like, I don't think there's nothing wrong with that, but I realize that the more money you have, the more good you can do in the world.
Mhm. 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Money's just a tool for
It's a
sure.
tool, exactly. Depending on how you use it. Now, it corrupts all, it can, right? It can
Yeah.
money and power is 2 things that can really corrupt you, but, yeah, if you use it right, I think there's a way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So at what point during this the 11 years was it in the army or was it after the army that you got involved in the child trafficking or human trafficking?
I was teaching, at SWIC, a course called Operator Advanced Course,
Mhm.
and I basically got a call on a Thursday. I failed a flight physical because I had 7 well, first of all, I was in a classified unit, and I was seeing a chiropractor there, and I was like, "Yeah, my neck's jacked, my back's jacked," and, like, I didn't realize those documents would then go over to my surgeon, my ortho, when I did a flight physical. I didn't know they had access to them,
Mm.
and they flagged me in flight because I failed my flight physical. So I needed a flight physical to go back to where I was going to go and try to. I just had other plans, and so I had to get a flight physical. I was going through all these different things, and they're like, "Hey, you failed it. Oh, by the way, you have a med board on Thursday." And I was like, where I had to like start my med board process, and so I was really taken back because it wasn't what I was planning. I was planning on doing other things, going to other organizations, and after that happened, I had to sit down and think of like, what do I want to do? Do I want to get out? Do I want to stand? And if you're not going to a tier one or you're not going to another classified intelligence unit, you pretty much are like a babysitter. Like you're teaching young privates, you're going back and that. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't feel like dealing with personnel. I like being in it, I like doing things. So I had to sit down and think, and with my background in human intelligence, counterintelligence, things like that, counterterrorism, yeah, your options are either go to a government agency or go deploy contract, things like that. And I had seen this TV show called like the Halo Corps, I think it was. And this dude got like hit in the face with a machete while he was rescuing a kid. I was like, that dude's awesome. Like he's just going down there as like a vigilante. I'm like, I want to do that. Minus the whole machete to the face thing. But
My
he had this awesome scar. And
oh
so
my
like
god.
I like Googled, I was like, child rescue. And
Uh,
there's nothing.
mm.
There's really there was like one nonprofit,
This
and
year was when?
this is 2000 and like 13, end of 13,
Okay.
14, January 2014. There's like nothing out there really. There's like maybe one nonprofit that was starting off. I shot them an email and they didn't respond.
Mhm.
And I'm like, damn. And so I found a program that just was starting and it was going into second class and it was called the Hero Corps, which is Human Exploitation Rescue Operative. And it was SOCOM Care Coalition, which is any special operation guys out there, gal, they know this. SOCOM Care Coalition is amazing. It's like helps you transition. So once I made that med board decision, I was like, I want to help kids, but there's no nonprofits out there. I don't have the money, like to go and start this thing. So I signed up for it, and what they do is they teach you it. The second class was only special operation personnel. Will train you in digital forensics, former special operations, so like intel, any guy support, operators. They'll teach you in digital forensics, and then you'll work a year for Homeland Security doing digital forensics child crimes. But it's unpaid. Like you have to literally. I'm like, damn, it's unpaid. So I went into the interview, and I was like, look, I can only go to Charlotte, and Charlotte's because at this point in time, I was a single dad. My first wife had left for LA for a year to follow her career, and I took my 5-year-old and 3-year-old by myself. So I was raising them at this point in time, so I was like, "I gotta stay in North Carolina, she's coming back." And so I was like, "Charlotte, that's it." So they gave it to me, and they call me up. I'm in, like, Gander Mountain in Fort Bragg. I'll still only call it Fort Bragg, not that name changes, BS, but they, I'm standing there in Gander Mountain, she calls me up, "Hey, you've been selected. We're giving you Charlotte." And I'm sitting there, I had, like, a six-figure pay job already lined up during this process, and I sat there, I was like, "Man, sorry, like, I don't think I could take it. I'm gonna go work this job." And I hung up, and I knew instantly, my gut was like, "You just messed up." Like, how like, I just knew. I, like, had this sickness. I called that number back. Luckily, it was her cell phone, and it wasn't, like, a call forward number. I called back, I was like, "Look, I'm sorry, I'll take the gig." I was like, "I take it," and that's all she wrote. From that point, I've been working it since, like, it was one of those moments, like, it just switched.
That affinity though, like why was it there? Because you have a job, six figure, waiting for you, unpaid year
My
internship.
gut is saved my
Okay.
life around the world. When I joined active duty, I woke up one day and I saw a flash of light and I knew I had to go active duty. It was like I had these moments in my life where my heart, my gut is like, go this way, do this thing. And I now do not hesitate whatsoever. There's been dark alleyways, there's been certain situations where I'm undercover where I just listen, like, and it's worked out. Obviously, I'm still here, everything like that, and so it was one of those moments, like, listening to my body's reaction of me saying something and putting those words out in the world really, I mean, there's an effect, right? And so, best
Some would call
decision.
it intuition, some would call it instinct,
Correct,
right?
yeah, like, like, your body does not lie,
Mhm.
right? Your
Yeah.
mind lies, your mind will convince you, my mind was telling me to take the money and go the defense route, and but, yeah, it was one of those things, so.
And so that happens, you're in that world, you're in this world now. What is this world called?
Oh, yeah, the digital forensic world.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we go through this course, it's like 12 weeks long, and so 4 weeks is at this child advocacy center, and every kid in there, we're in their conference room doing their class, so they bring in world experts, world-renowned experts to teach you about the psychology around pedophiles, how they manipulate them, all the things that go into it, and then we're around these kids every day, and these kids all have been sexually abused. And they do forensic interviews in there, and so you're just seeing us all day, and it's a very powerful 4 weeks. And then you go and you do 8 weeks of forensic school, where you actually then they expose you to child sexual abuse material, things like that. And first video I've ever watched was just like, I can't believe this evil exists. I was torn up having to watch this, and so I was like, I hate this.
Yeah. But take us back to that mindset. The first time you saw it, the first time I heard even just stories about it, right? It affected me so much. You watch this you watch this heinous act take place. Do people quit at that moment? They're like, "No, I don't want to do
I
this."
mean, the guy that was instructed, named Jim Cole, he's a good friend of mine now. He looks at me, he's like, "Glenn, you all right?" And did in front of the whole class because I think he just visually seen of how I wanted to just find this guy and kill him,
Mhm.
for it. And so it was just, when you go to war, and this is the reason I got into this fight versus like taking this job versus going there. It's like war is very, very gray. Politics involved, going through one man's freedom fighters, another man's terrorist type deal, that mentality. And they're the bad guys. They're the evil people, or the people that are against our political beliefs for the most part, right? When you see a young child being raped, that is pure evil. That is good versus bad. That is black, that is white. And so, first time I saw that video, I was kind of blown away that that exists, that that level of evil would do that to a child, right? Like, and it's, I mean, it's horrific. It's the audio is even worse than the fucking videos. Like, so when I saw that, I was like, "Well, I'm gonna do this the rest of my life." Like, this is definitely my calling now, for it, so.
Did you always have the vision for what that was gonna evolve into, eventually going undercover? That's the one thing entrepreneurship, right? Like, the entrepreneur's brain isn't just, "I see this opportunity," it's, "I see this opportunity, fast forward, and I can see what we can actually do with this."
Yeah, for that program, you become like an 1801, which by definition is a digital forensic analyst. And then they didn't have any transition program to go from analyst to special agent. So I was like, I'm gonna be a special agent. They're like, no, you're not. You're like, you're like, there's no transition for you. You're gonna be a forensic analyst. And after working it for like 6 months, I was really good at like finding people and finding data and bringing them out. And at this point in time, I was self teaching myself how to hack at the same point.
Uh-huh.
And so I was putting together like this skill set of analyzing this, and then, I was like, you're like, it's like being a support guy. While you're there, you're like, and you're seeing all the special agents with their guns, and they're going out, and you're going on these search warrants. You're like, I want to be a special agent. I don't want to be that. And so, yes, this was. I mean, basically, I was going through it, and then I just could not watch videos. Like, I was having severe anxiety walking in every day, and having to turn on my monitor was just a hard task for me. Like I just couldn't. My body, I guess I just get emotionally tied to a lot of things. Whatever I do, I'm 100%, right? Like, I have the worst addictive personality. And so while doing that, like, you're doing good, but like my last case that I work had 25 terabytes of child sexual abuse material. You're like, these videos, if they weren't categorized already, or if they changed any little bit, you have to watch them. And so you're going through all this shit all day long. You're like, and then it's like regular porns mixed in, and then there's the animal stuff. Like, there's all this, like, you can just see the depravity of these people for it. And it's like you're in the mindset because you're reading through every message, you're going through every email, like going through all this stuff. And so I was like, man, I cannot do this. And so they actually offered me, during the sequence session or whatever that's called, they offered me a direct hire to special agent. So it was like one of the first times that they did that. They were like, hey, we'll make you a special agent.
So the question that led up to that was actually, did you have a vision for what
Yeah.
you could do with this, right?
So yeah, after they offered the special agent position, right, it takes time to go to DC, like get their approval, but it was offered. And being part of this program, the Hero Corps, if you didn't take the job, it was almost like you were blackballed, and they looked down upon you for not taking this job because they gave you this training, even though you were still paid for it for the year. Like, I blew through all of my savings. Me and my current, or my wife at the time, we moved from North Carolina with our kids. Like, she had to quit her job, and so we lost like all of our savings to do this program. So like then I'm like, yeah, you're in a pretty tough financial position because you just got out of the military and it's unpaid. So if you're doing that for a year, luckily she got her job in the area, and she started working and she would pay for things. Um, I had to sit there, and during that period of time, I got offered a job doing a defense contracting work in cyber. I had just started getting into like learning more about hacking and things like that, and I became a project manager for a hacking course. It would take like tier one operators and teach them how to hack in like 6 weeks. And I was just a project manager, but I really got exposed to the community. And so I kind of paused my internship to do that while waiting on the paperwork. And then, there was a few agents, especially this woman, Kelly. She's just a rock star agent in North Carolina. She was like, Glenn, she's like, I know this is a great gig. I love working with you. She's like, you can do so much more in the world if you go out there and do this. If you go out there and battle this. She's like, you're gonna have bureaucracy, and you're gonna be capped at a certain level. And I was like, her and another guy, Jim and Patrick, they all kind of said the same thing. And they're like, you have a lot of potential to just go out there and go do it. I was like, wow. Kind of sat there and thought about it. I'm like, damn. And it helped. I was getting these paychecks from this. And so, yeah, that's what I did. I decided to turn down the special agent position. So I didn't have to like expose the reason why I just couldn't watch his videos anymore.
Mhm.
After a year of seeing everything from, just very young ages, like I'm like, I can't do this anymore. And so, but knew I wanted to hunt them. Like I knew that I wanted to hunt these individuals down. And so when I got out, I took about a month or two, and I partnered. I then started my own defense company
Mhm.
with my partner. Like he's my brother for sure.
That's
He
awesome.
didn't have brothers, he had sisters, and I had sisters, and I always wanted a brother. And so like we always had these ideas of like we're gonna work together, and like I trained on a course, and we became like best friends instantly. And so we started a defense contract company together. And during this period of time I found another
But
non.
break that down. Defense contract
Yeah,
company.
it was
So what is
like,
that?
because I did this defense course where I left that organization, and there was like 5 of us that went to this new company, and we were gonna do, just defense work, like teach them, do real world scenarios, teach them different things. And I was a cyber guy, that way I could bring that cyber flair to it. He was a surveillance guy, so he was a head and surveillance instructor for special operations. He was a Green Beret. He's absolute rock star. He's good at everything he does. And so we're like yin and yang. Everything I'm bad at, he's good at, and everything, he's bad at, I'm good at. And so like I challenge everybody out there, like, find your work wife, find your road dog, like, your buddy
Mhm.
that's gonna be there with you, that's gonna go. And so we did that, and we just we're really good at it. And then it came to a point where I didn't like, not that I didn't like the people, the 5 other partners, but, like, I think it's like every military guy makes that mistake of starting a company with 5 people, and then nothing gets done because there's too many decision makers.
Mhm.
And so I was like, "Hey, Jameson, like, I'm gonna go stand up Delator. It's all cyber based. It's all around like teaching my skills to government agencies. Do you want to come with me?" He stayed with them. It was like heartbreak. It was like a straight like heartbreak moment where he did it, but we always maintained our friendship. And so I spent 2015. I partnered with my new company. Partnered with a nonprofit, the only team that were doing child rescue operations. And so they gave me a contract to do analytical support for their operations. But then they were like, "Hey, would you come on operations?" And so I started out going on operations. In 2015, I went on 8 different undercover operations in 8 different countries around the world.
Is that with OUR?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I had a contract with them, but then they wanted me to do operations, so I did. And adding that cyber flair to operations, like, I was working cases that they had worked before, they couldn't find the individuals, and I found the individuals. That's how I met Paul Hutchison.
Yeah.
Me and Paul worked on, I don't know, like 4 or 5 different areas. So I worked a lot in Central America on operations. I worked in Haiti, like, leading up to there's some big ones. By using my cyber techniques, I was getting really good at, hacking, like, and it says hacking, but it's open source intelligence, where I was breaking Facebook, getting data that wasn't supposed to, but it was legal because I wasn't like bypassing a wall. I wasn't putting a password in,
Right.
but I had different strings and attachments where I could take the whole voter registry, database of North Carolina, and I could tell you every single account associated with it. Like I was able to do batch lookups just through certain queries. So using these techniques in the child crime fight, it was shooting fish in a barrel. Like I was clicking all things. And so they came to a point where, Tim asked me to come over, and be a part of it. And, like I'm not hating or anything, but they were all at media, people following you around, showing techniques and things like that. And I was like, I don't think we should do this. I don't want to tip my hand these individuals, because once you show your hand, they're going to stop doing what we're catching them on. And we had a falling out. They want their way, I want my way. They offered me to come a part of it, to be full time over there, and then fold my company and just be a part of them. Didn't want to do it, so I stood up. I called Jameson because I had taken him on operations with me and Paul before he'd done one with us. And I was like, "Hey, what if we just stand up our nonprofit?" And I really stood up my nonprofit because I hate the nonprofit space. Like I couldn't stand it. And I wanted it to be about the deed, not the glory. I didn't want to have this whole messiah complex that you're this guy out there. I really just wanted to help as many people as I could and stay in the shadows.
Why is that so prevalent? It feels like the more I've done research on foundations and child trafficking, why is there so much ego in this industry?
Oh, it's crazy. You see it now, like people give me hell and say ego. Like the only
Mm.
reason I went public was in March. I was approached by Andy Stump and the Ironclad guys to come because they heard of me through some former tier one guys that were working on my team, and like from Jack Carr was the executive producer. So they reached out to me. I was like in Medellin, Colombia, and they're like, "Hey, would you come tell your story?" And I was sitting there, and it's like, all this stuff was coming out. There's all these organizations, and for me, I'm like, well, if I do this, one, it's not about me. It's about law enforcement, right? And actually, Paul told me a story. I thought it was one of the best explaining. Like Paul Hutchinson, he's just a stud. He told me his story of like why he does it. Because I was always asking him like, "Yo, why are you getting out there? Like, why are you going to public like this?" And he's like, "Look, man." He's like, there was a wealthy businessman in North Carolina back before slavery. Abraham Lincoln didn't stop slavery. What this businessman would do is hold, I don't remember his name 'cause I'm terrible at the story, but he would host these dinners, and he had wealthy individuals from Virginia up north to New York. And he would have these parties down south, and he would have them come to this house. And then after dinner, he would take them and show them the slave boats. And for me, right around March, it's like I got so tired because I've done 30 plus operations, 15 countries, and it feels like whack-a-mole. And Paul has told me, he's like, like he brought attention to the cause, right? He showed them that, and then their money influenced the slavery. It influenced Lincoln. It influenced the politicians to put an end to slavery. Right. And so I realized that you're not going to rush your way out of this. We have to bring awareness. We have to get the people to get behind it. Like, everyone asks you, like, what can I do? I'm like, scream at the top of your voice. Like, you have to talk to your politicians. You have to make this a priority to get out there. And so I had to come, and I had to start telling our story. So I did the first podcast with the change agents. And, for me, it's like, I don't like doing these, but I know that it's important to get this out there. But you have to do it in a way where you're not the guy. Like, I'm not, dude. Like, I have a team of studs and legends they're doing this work, and it's like, yeah, I've done a lot of them. I'm just also an idiot. Like I'm just like I have a passion for it. To go after, but it's just that fine balance between bringing awareness for the cause. Like I think law enforcement, right? They should have they need to do a better job at getting these stories out there, getting more funding. If you look at the war on drugs versus the war on child crimes, the amount of funding that they have is so lopsided that you would throw up, right? And so that's the way it for me personally was like trying not to find a balance between not getting that ego
Yeah.
and saying I'm this. Like you saw Sound of Freedom come out, like that's based on 7 operations,
Yep.
right? But they made it around one person, like, and they kind of shit on Paul in that movie, but in reality, Paul was the stud.
Yeah.
Right?
He's
Paul
the funder.
did
Yep.
all the dirty work.
Yep.
Paul was the guy on the ground, right? Like
Yep.
I worked with him. Me and him were side by side, right?
Mhm.
I was the security guard. I was the one fixing things. He was doing this, like, and so like I didn't go in every operation, Paul, but I know when he went on other operations, he should have been the main character. And I'm not hating on Tim. Tim started, he was in the game for it, but Paul really put himself in danger because a lot of the ways those operations would work is myself, Paul, a few other guys that were working these would go in and do the initial contact. The initial contact is the most risky you get. And then it leads up to they would do these sex parties and things like that. So,
I also want to point out what you said. You're really good at praising and recognizing those around you. And I know you've mentioned that you have like a core 5 guys that are the most badass guys
yeah.
on the planet. But also, that points to you because you're the founder and CEO of this nonprofit that you are leading.
Solo operations for 4 years
Mhm.
where I would go to these countries or I'd work at cyber leads like that. And, like I had to get buy-in, and I got one buy-in by a guy named Tate. Um, Absolute legend from tier one, what he's done. Like his story will be told one day. And he believed in it. He believed in it. He's like, and we used to work together when I was at an organization, and like I was like, oh, dude, this is like the Tom Brady. Like this guy is the rock star. Now he's done a lot of great things. And I don't want to put his background out there because he's still operational. And he bought into it, and so we have a tactical arm, and he runs that side of it. And like he started bringing more operators to the table and more people for it. So and then then it's like for a few years it was like being a part of a captain of a pirate ship. Like these dudes can vote you off. It's like like
Yeah.
it's pretty much savagery. It's
Yeah.
like our left limit is working with law enforcement. Don't get arrested. Make sure you have your left limit of that, right? It's like,
So how do you lead a group of people that don't want to be
I
led?
have no. It's not that I have no fear. I'm just stupid. I don't know. Like I'll go like me and Tate went on an operation to like Haiti where we were like, 3 a.m. breaking into like over this wall, this compound, to install
Mhm.
concrete cinder block cameras around it. This guy had like impregnated a 13-year-old, and so yeah, like, we were just recording, like, all the information, wearing ski masks, going in and doing the thing, and, like, I think it's just, like, when you're a leader, like, every operation you're going to things like that, you are nervous, I don't care what people say. You gotta go through and I'm like, "Ah, well, I'm just gonna, grab my nuts and we're just gonna just do it," right? Like, every operation that I've done that's, like, high profile like that, it's what you do with that fear, like, being fearless, like, you have no fear is not good, right? Like, but then having too much fear, so you find that balance, and I think when you lead, you have to lead from the front. In the military, you can't kick somebody out of the military for being overweight if you're overweight. I can't ask guys to go to these countries and do these things if I'm not willing to do it myself. Like, I was just on the Gaza border like 3 months ago in October, like, getting Americans out, and that was my last operation I will probably ever do for it, but it's like you have to be able to go through and do it, and I think once you set the example, then they'll do it. And for a lot of these guys, like, it's new to them because we don't have government, like, we don't have the support that you have at a tier 1, right? Like, I mean, my first operation with Tate, I had another guy who was supposed to go, and he, like, had done work before, and he's like, "No, not doing it, too risky, you guys are idiots," all these things, and I'm like, "Tate, you going? Because 'Cause I'm going." He's like, it's his first operation, he's like, "Let's go." He's like, so, like, he once he did that, I was like, he's a ride or die. He has valid arguments. We don't have a big plan. I was like, "We'll have a plan when we get on the ground." I
Yeah.
only have, like, you have to have ground truth. Like, I have truth that is from a third party for this individual. Like, just believe me, just go on the ground. We'll be okay. We'll be fine. We can talk our way out of anything because we don't have guns. Like, you're going in, like, we got knives and you have to be able to be a smooth talker. And so, yeah, I had a dude's like, "Yeah, I'm not going." So he quit, and which was just fine. You don't have to go to every operation. People can turn down, and I don't look down on them. Like, oh, you are. I mean, there was operations they did. I think one dude got stabbed 20 times and other things. Like, there is some danger to it, but it's also like walking through South Side Chicago. It could be just as dangerous, right? Like, it's all about, yeah, statistics,
Yeah.
locations that you're in, and being smart with it. So.
How do you train high risk aversion?
Guys that we pull are like former law, like my director of law enforcement. She's super. She's been in law enforcement for 35 years. Like,
Okay.
so she has that balance that brings into it. And then when you go into it, all these guys that I have, I mean, I think I have like 6 or 7 tier 1 guys, former tier 1. I have a handful of Green Berets. Like, every one of our operators for a tactical division, they all are very well trained in high risk environment. If anything, they're all more qualified than I am.
Mhm.
Like, I was just an intel dude, in the army,
Mhm.
in the special operation community. These guys all have an amazing background of being in a high profile of, shooting people in the face. We're not shooting people in the face anymore. We're doing it. And so it was taking their skill sets of what they really had, all those things to make them a great leader.
Mhm.
Because to get in a tier 1 organization to be an operator, like, you have to go through a ton of tests, IQ tests, Wonderlicks, other things, and you have to be a good leader. So you bring them over and you try to teach them and give them the skill sets they need to then work this
I
fight.
don't think we exactly, like, pinned the moment where you had it, but you founded the Sentinel Foundation, which is what we're talking about,
Mhm.
right?
I had my falling out with OUR
Uh-huh.
and Tim, and that's where I called Jameson. We started it back in, I think it was like 2016. We submitted the paperwork. The first 4 years, we pretty much self funded.
Mhm.
Um, and then we had a high profile former collegiate and NFL football player come in, and we partnered with them for it. So, yeah,
Very
yeah, it's
cool.
Tim Tebow. He's an absolute legend.
You guys are partnered right now? Or
Yeah,
does
like,
he invest?
we're
Oh,
partnered
okay.
for it. So we were part of the rescue team. And when he found out about like child sex abuse material, he found me, I think, through his brother or somebody, like one of his, I think it was his brother, knew a guy that knew me and asked for a meeting. And so I met with them, and
Mhm.
I can't speak highly enough about this guy. Like, you see their persona on TV, you see everything. He's 10 times better in person.
Wow.
Like, he's even a greater role model, a mentor for myself, for our team. For it, because he was like, I do a Zoom call and he's like, "Hey, when can you come down to Jackson?" I'm like, "Yo, you're Tim Tebow." Like,
Whenever, yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, "I'll be there now. Like, I'll start walking." Like, yeah. And so we go down there. He's like, "Well, I got like 2 hours that we can meet." And I started talking, me and my boy Tate, and he's like, you could see that he was like really like he's asking great questions. Yeah, like 12 hours later, we're at his house and he's still talking, like, about it. Like, he was just completely hooked because they do, like, I tell people, like, you can donate to Sentinel Foundation. But also you can donate to the Tim Tebow Foundation. Like, they do such amazing work in aftercare and orphanages and big projects, out there. 100% of all their donations, because they get the overhead covered, and go to, their things, and we try to maintain the same level too. Um, but doing good work, but he's like, "Hey," and I sat down with him because I had worked undercover, I think, like, 3 or 4 times in Haiti, and I was like, "All right, Tim." I was like, "Look, I'll go anywhere but Haiti." I was like, "Anywhere." He's like, "So Haiti, we have a case there." I was like, "Son," like, yeah, he like, "Damn, okay. Well, I guess I'm going to Haiti." And
Yeah.
so, like, um, like, partnered with him has been, a dream come true, because he really took we were able to then do more, because then we were able to get funding for it, and then Afghanistan happened and collapsed. I called up Tim. I was, like, in Morocco or somewhere, and I was like, "Hey, these Americans." He's like, "Let's do it." Me and him raised a whole bunch of money in, like, 24 hours on calls to then do those operations. So we have a counter human trafficking, and then we become traffickers with these crises. So Afghanistan, Ukraine, Gaza, we were working on extraction of Americans out of that area. So after that point, our relationships got super strong, and they built
Can you
out their.
talk about that operation, the Afghanistan
Yeah, yeah.
operation?
That was an operation. So I saw all these things that were going down. I was getting calls from people working this, and I usually have a lot of tactical patience. I'm not just going to run into this.
Mhm.
And so I saw all these nonprofits that were going over there and, like, trying to rent jets and doing these things. And we had been in the space for like 5 years. And at this point in time, I had a bigger team now, and I had a bunch of tier one guys. And I'm like, these guys are the guys that should do it. And so we built out a team. There was like 15 of us, flew on a private jet all the way over there. Now, at this point in time, I had a relationship, I guess you would say, with the US government in a context I was doing. And I had a congressman on us. So we had Republican Mark Wayne Mullen. He's now Senator Mark Wayne Mullen. Absolute rock star. And we thought he was going to be our chip to make sure we land. Because you're flying a private jet all the way over there. It is not cheap. And like being a good steward of your money where you're going over there. And so we built out a team. I mean, we had so many. We had a wait list of people that wanted to join to go into this. I mean, we were fully kitted. We had body armor. We had a full com communication setup for it. And our plan originally was to land there. We had 3 teams dispersed, headquarters, and we were going outside the wire. Right, we had safe houses, we had AKs, we had armor vehicles, and we were going to go out there because we had a high profile guy named Corey Mills, Congressman Corey Mills. Now, just before he was a congressman, he had a lot of defense contract companies out there, and
Uh-huh.
so he had all these connections already on the ground. And so it was like a perfect mix of, like, we had medical, we had former Green Berets, we had former tier one guys, and I was just over there overseeing kind of with it. And I had a team leader that was running point on, like, all tactical things. It was Tate. He was running the, like, ground. He had a relationship with a lot of these guys, so he's running the ground operation. And so we're going to land, but I reported that, like, hey, I have a congressman go with me, like, for it. And so we get in the air, and I gotta back up though real quick. So while we're building this team, like, shout out to Tim Tebow. He's like, "I'm going." I was like, "Dude, I am not killing Tebow." It's like, I was like,
You're not
dude, I was
being the
like,
guy that
there's
kills
like
Tebow,
no
yeah.
way. But
Yeah.
I commended him immensely. Like, he was so passionate about getting over there and, like, helping out. And he had just left Jacksonville at this point in time, and so it worked out. So we're flying over there, and sure enough, we get there, and they're like, "You're not landing." We're like, "What do you mean we're not landing?" We're like, We have clearance." So I'm on this G5 or 6, whatever. We had to, like, commandeer ladders from Dublin, Ireland. So we have ladders all lined up. I'll show you some pictures of this. So ladders all through this G5. We're all body kit, comm equipment's up, all of our body armor, and we're just circling the airfield, like, landing. Like, "You're not landing." And then so they would pull my landing clearance. So then I would call back to DC. I had a buddy that was responsible for giving them, and so he would get me a new one. And then we tried to land. They're like, "No, you're not." Then they're like, "All right, you can land, but we're arresting every one of you." So I was like, we flew all this way. So I guess I was like, the plan is we're gonna land, and we're not gonna listen because they're not gonna arrest all of us. We're just gonna go, and we're gonna run 3 different directions. I was like, they can't catch all 3 teams. They don't have the personnel for this. And so I'm like, this is a great idea. And so, um, luckily though, because this is 4 hours before the bombing, and we were like, that's where we were trying to get out. Like, you don't know if we could have got out. We were gonna figure a way to get out of that damn base. Luckily, we got denied entry, and now we're like bingo fuel. We're running out of fuel. So Mark Wayne called the prime minister of Georgia, the country of Georgia, Tbilisi, Georgia. So we flew there and like got picked up by like the prime minister's detail, and like all of us out of our kit, body armor. We're just sitting in Tbilisi, Georgia, and I knew that all these nonprofits that were over there, like they're whatever. I'm not hating. They were doing their thing. They were putting people on planes, going after it, like going on them. I knew that this was going to be a sustained operation. So I knew that we needed to take over the border towns, and so we came up with the plan. We were looking at 3 different ways. Then like State Department was getting involved with Mark Wayne, so they went back and forth because then they popped him out. So what we had to do is we sent a plane to Tbilisi, Georgia. We had all booked tickets, but then we had another team that we're not part of it. The main party, we flew on another jet to Dubai. So Tbilisi, Georgia, they got them. They all got secondary. All their equipment got taken, and the State Department pulled out. So we kind of lost 1/3 of our team, and then I cut the team in half. So I sent some guys home, and then the main package, I think there was like 7 or 8 of us was the main package. So then we're looking at like helicopters. So we were trying to get helicopters to then we're going to do helicopter landing in through Dushanbe, Tajikistan. Then we were trying to get in, and we were doing everything to get in. Like thanks. So we partnered with the Free Burma Rangers. So we all flew to Dubai at that point in time, and then we were working logistics of like, okay, then all the aircraft were gonna go in. Like Eric Prince had some aircraft, and other people had some. We were gonna go on the aircraft and get on the ground that way. But then the aircraft shut down. So I'm like, okay, aircrafts are all being shut down. Russia basically cut the border off, and so we went to Tbilisi, Georgia. So I stayed with a team in case the aircraft popped, and then Tate went to Tajikistan with Corey Mills and those guys, and so they land in Dushanbe, then they go down to the border, and this is a Russian controlled area. So we do a recon, and that river is not possible to cross, right? So we were gonna cross over. Free Burma Rangers were doing. They were those guys. Dave Eubanks, man. If you don't know about the Free Burma Rangers, look those boys up because Dave Eubanks is a godly man that leads from the front, and he's been in, like every conflict zone. Like he's an awesome guy. If you don't know Dave Eubanks, he's a really good friend of mine. So we partnered up, and we're like, all right, you guys are getting in, we're getting in, and then the whole Northern Alliance got wiped out. So Free Burma Rangers were not going in. And
Oh,
so
shit.
we started working with them of like, all right, let's look at extracts. Can we do rope bridges? Not an option. Um, and so finally, now we're dealing like we had a bunch of Americans, blue passports. So the team on the ground there was getting our people up. So Miramar, this lady and her 3 children, are the cutest kids ever. They're coming up. They're Americans. They were there just visiting their family and like blue passport holders. They get them up to the gate, and the team on the ground is communicating with the Taliban. They're like, Taliban saying, "Hey, have them call us." So we call them. My interpreter Yusuf is like, "Yeah, like we got clearance. You got to let them out." And we don't have clearance. We're just lying to the Taliban. And so they're like, "Well, who are you talking to?" Like, and one of the guys is like, "Yeah, we're talking to the Qatari Taliban leadership." And the guy's like, "Well, have them call us." Well, we happen to actually have a Qatari sat phone. So
Oh,
my
shit.
interpreter changed his voice, called him back from the Qatari number, acted like a Taliban leadership, and that's how the first Americans were extracted via ground route. And the US
Oh.
government is long gone, and so we duped the Taliban because Russia and China had basically shut down those borders. Nobody's allowed to leave
Uh-huh.
because it looks bad on the US, right?
Yeah.
And so by us duping the Taliban, that's how the first Americans, we had all this like recorded, got through. So then we had to get State Department to come down to the border. So like we called like the regular like office number of state, and they're like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" And then we worked a relationship out with them, and so that's how like the first extraction on the ground happened was
Wow.
by the team on the ground just really like just thinking on their feet. This is what happens when you take a tier level special operations guy. They are so creative with their plans and their actions that like they came up, yeah, and it worked. And so then that team rotated out. I went back. I went over there and took over the team for a while with a guy named Brian, and we got out a ton of it. We got all the uh, dual sits out. We got UK passport holders out. We got blue passport holders out, and so I sat there. I think it was like 8 weeks. So sat over there in Dushanbe in Tajikistan. We went down to a town called Dusti, and that's where we were pulling them out for it. So it was a great
Wow.
operation success. We had a rat line set up. We sent a whole bunch to Pakistan. And like this is a big moment for Sentinel because it was like, yeah, thrown into the limelight.
Mm.
Yeah, one of my guys went on Fox News, which we had like a media blackout, so we got into it, but then it wound up being really good. So yeah, so
Fascinating.
it was a crazy operation. I mean, all the guys have a lot of balls. 'Cause it was like, yeah, jump on that plane and go land, and everyone's just like, "Alright, let's do it. We got it's a Call of Duty." And, like, some of these guys were, like, the guys that did the original invasion for this tier 1 organ like, they were the original guys who were on the plane, like, they're like, "I was in the invasion," and he's like, "I wanna be part of I wanna put my feet on the ground there." Unfortunately, we were on the ground. You know, it turns into like, a lot of those operations turn into a logistical, like, movement, knowing people, funneling it turns into an intelligence operation versus a ground operation, for the most part, so
Man, that's incredible, man. Mhm,
after we, you know, like, sustained operations for Afghanistan, we knew was critical, you know,
mhm.
because there's a lot of people that didn't think the situation was bad, it was gonna get worse, and dual sits or there was a Civ program, and so we were doing everything, so I left, Dushanbe, went back north or I went over to not north, I went to Dubai, and I got a contact into a former CFO of the Taliban, and, like, this dude had, like, been shot 13 times from the extreme Taliban, so he's, like, more of the progressive guy, so I was working a strategic relationship, so if we had certain individuals, if we could get them out and things like that, and so you have to work with your enemy in the intel world especially, and so, like, I find myself and, like, I go to we first have dinner, and this is, like, when the World Expo's going on, but we have dinner, and I'm meeting his son. His son's 20 years old now. At this point in time, we've been at war for 20 years, and this guy was one of the nicest individuals I've ever met. You know, so you have this mentality where they're my enemy, I hate them. Now, I'm not condoning anything they've done.
Yeah,
Leave politics outside, just look at the person, right? Like, and so I'm sitting there with him, and man, he is the nicest, most polite, and me and his son are just chatting it up, like, going back and forth, like, he speaks pretty good English, like, we're going through, everything, like, his son has been hanging out on the Eastern Pakistan border or Western Pakistan border, Eastern Afghanistan, like, the whole time, like, he's getting bombed to hell. He hates us, we hate him, you know, like, it's just what you're at, and then you're at this dinner table breaking bread, and you really just start going through it. And then the next day, we're gonna go do the World Expo, and so like I'm in the Nastasha to respect like their hospitality for taking me to the World Expo, and I'm on this conveyor belt in the U.S. What it's me and the Taliban just going through hanging out, and I'm like, man, like this is a very unreal. And I was sick in the moment, so the Taliban guy called. His buddy to bring me like lemon tea to bring it over with honey and like I mean like all these things that like he felt like a fatherly figure. Really, and I'm like, "This is wild." Like, it kind of really threw my brain in a like, in a spin, and it really made me think of, like, who really is your enemy. Now, I'm not yes, technically, the politics and things that they go in, but I'm looking at the person of really, the whole comment of, like, one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, right? And, like, if somebody came to my neighborhood and bombed my house because they were trying to kill my neighbor that was bad, but you kill my kids, I'm gonna be the best suicide bomber ever made, right?
yeah.
You know what I
Right,
mean? Like,
right.
right? Because it's my children, things like that. And so, it just made me go back to that critical thinking of everything like that. And so, yeah, it was a wild experience. It was life changing for me for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, that's it's such a nuanced topic because, yeah, like you said, critical thinking or the ability, the dual thinking, it's like
It really is mind blowing when you really start looking at. But I also I come from the camp of that ideas should only rent space in your brain, right?
yes.
They should only rent space. You should not ever be at a point where this is it. You have to be able to hear other people's perspective and principles and other things and how they look at it. Doesn't mean I have to change them, but I think if you have an idea of rent space versus like right now, we're so polarized in the US that these are the ideas and I can't find any middle ground.
Yep.
Like, yeah, like I'm pro life against abortion, but also for myself, I think that plan B should be as valuable as water is. And so you can get ahead of the curve, right? And I think if a woman is raped, then there should be some like you can't, it's so hard to be 100%. I think in politics these days, we have these like dead hard lines, right? And so, like, I think you have to be willing to hear the other side. And so, like, when you're dealing,
Is the term centrist? Like you're in the center and
I
then
don't
you
think I'm no,
decide.
I'm on the right when it comes to guns. Like you're not
Yeah.
like name one country that's had a genocide that had guns, right? Like no,
Yeah.
like I won't budge from that. But I think if you can have 90% of your ideas, like they should be rented. You can't be fully ingrained. Every idea I have is the only way.
Yeah.
Then you're yeah. And so I think from all the worldly travels I've done, I think that's one thing that I've really picked up is like hearing perspective of like hear their perspective and what do they really think, and even ask people, even though you're hell bent on abortion
Yep.
right, against it, like, hear that other person's side of it. And here now that doesn't mean Now, some people, I'm like, "I don't wanna hear anything you have to say. I got it." But, like, I'll hear them, and they'll keep going down, we'll have dialogue back and forth, and then when it escalates to a certain level, I'm like, "Alright, we're done.
Yeah.
You know, we tried." But I've had it where they've changed. I've changed ideas and concepts, yeah, like, thought processes
And
for it.
how do you teach that? How does somebody gain that without traveling the world? The situations that you're put in now, like that situation where you were with the CFO of the Taliban, like that still doesn't make sense in my head because the way that you're portrayed is you don't think about the different groups as having institution, organizations, or hierarchies like this. You just see them as the enemy.
They surround themselves with like-minded people, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what you like,
Yep.
what you do. You are the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Yep.
That is with money, that is with concept, ideas, right? You are that little group. So you have to get out of that group. I think what's helped me is I do a lot of, like, singleton travel, or I'm going around, like, I lived in Dubai, and that's like the Star Wars cantina, right? It's like everyone puts their guns at the door, and you have Russian, Chinese, Iranian, you got English, Australian, British, like, you're all there, and so you get a perspective of your own country by these individuals, and you get a whole different perspective of what they're looking at. And so I could sit down at these dinner tables and have these conversations with these individuals and be like, "Yeah, that's a good way to look at it." You know, like, certain countries have different healthcare. They have socialists. And I'm like, "Yeah, that wouldn't work here. It's not good." And we go back and forth in these different battles. And they're like, "Well, you don't care about life." And like, I do. I think there's better ways we could do things. And so once you start having these critical ideas, or these critical thinking sessions, I think it's fascinating of really, like, where it takes you.
Yeah. It's like a
Yeah.
mental jujitsu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
And
for me, I learned that skill set or that ability because my parents were immigrants to the country. And but our culture, we were American, but our culture was Argentine.
yeah,
We drank yerba mate, we ate the food from Argentina, right? We kept the cultural and the ethnic context in our household.
yeah,
But when I stepped out of my house, I was American. Everything, right? From the school, from the way I spoke. My first language was Spanish, right? So I understand the nuance and the difference. There's so many different dynamics that you learn, and there's contrasting ideas and opinions. And so that was my little micro or meta lesson growing up, knowing, oh shit, cultures, countries are different. There's 190 something countries.
yeah,
Every country has its own nonverbal communication, paraverbal communication, the way they speak, the words they use,
yeah,
everything, right? Me and you making eye contact, you shaking hands in different countries means different things, right? It's a sign of disrespect if I don't stare at you in the eyes. If I'm walking as a stranger up and down any sidewalk and I'm staring a dude dead ass in his eyes and I don't know him, that's a sign of aggression.
yeah,
But if I'm in India and I'm not holding another man's hands while I'm speaking to him, that's a sign of disrespect and looking him in the eyes,
yeah.
right? So it's like these cultural contexts are so important and it really does help and travel helps with that. So it's like, books can help, but in general, it's like, how do you teach people? And when I said back to the word, when I said centrist, it's not that you're in the center for every opinion, but for every idea or every bill that passes politically, but you're center until you've critically thought what are the benefits, the pros and cons to this. I'm not red or I'm not blue on everything. I might be blue on some things and red on some
I
things.
think if you're extremist on anything, you're
Yeah,
wrong.
right.
There's no way in hell you can be 100% on one side. Like, for me personally, like, it's unheard of. Maybe there's a small 5% chance that there's those people that believe that, but they're wrong in my
Mhm.
eyes. If
Yep.
you're extremist, you're extremist. Doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter if you're a terrorist, not a terrorist for it. I think one of the things I learned, and I go to the National Prayer Breakfast every year. Like, it's been a great organization for me. Is I got to sit in on meetings, and I was escorting the Swiss delegates a few years ago before COVID, and they asked a question, to a guy named Tony Hall, and Tony Hall is the former World Food Program, director, and also former, I think it was a congressman, Democratic congressman out of Ohio. And he said, and it was one of the best lessons I learned. They asked him, he said, "How do you guys negotiate and get along?" And Tony looked at him, he said, "Look," he's like, "before we even negotiate, they come to my house, they break bread. They meet
Mhm.
my family, they say who I am. Then I go over and I go break bread with their family and meet who they are, and we sit down. Is because you cannot negotiate, you can't talk to somebody if you don't look at them as a person."
Wow.
Right? And so
Powerful.
it is so important. I try to do it with everything. Even
Mhm.
my enemy, I will sit down with at a table. I will sit down and get to understand who they are, right? Like, some people screw you over, they screw you over. It is what it is. but, like, trying to make sure you take that time to find out, like, who their family is, if they have kids. I think you're less likely to screw somebody off if you know they have a 5-year-old or a 3-year-old and they're taking care of their livelihood. I don't think the politicians do it enough. I
Mhm.
think the national prayer breakfast is important in DC because you have Democrats and Republicans living together,
Mhm.
right, where the politicians can try to find that common ground. But I think I take that in all walks of life,
Yeah,
you know?
dude, that's important. It's
Yeah.
the moment that you dehumanize another person for the color of their skin, the nationality, the country they're from, that's the way to break that barrier.
Yeah.
Sit down, you break bread. Like, oh shit, man, these guys have thoughts, ambitions, wishes, and dreams. They want their families to be safe. They are humans,
Yeah.
and we don't. I don't even do that now in my own business partnerships. Like that. That's great advice. I'm gonna start doing that. If you want to be in business or any partnership with me, I need to see how you move in
Yeah.
this world.
This is they say you can tell a lot by a person of how their kids and their animals look at them,
Yes.
right? So, like, I think it's important to see that side, and I think with all I think I've been to, like, I don't know, 40 years, 50 I don't have no idea how many countries I've been to around the world. I found that, like, most countries are the same, right? Like, 80% of the country is great people. And, like, you have to I gave a bad rep to a few countries, and I was like, "I'm never going back there." And then I went back and went to a different area, and I thought of it this way, like, it's like if somebody came and they went to, like, Oakland, California, where it's high crime, or somewhere that's high crime, and that's the only impression they had of the whole US, it would be flawed in that way. And so I always think of, like, giving those chances to people, sit down with them, really break bread with them, find out, have a drink with them, whatever that may be, to really bond and get to know them. It's gonna help you in the long run for negotiations,
Yeah.
for understanding, less judgment. I try to surround myself, and I have friends that are far left leaning because I'm like, what going on here? Like, let me understand where you're coming from. And 90% of the time I don't agree with them,
Still,
but
even
it
after I
doesn't
break
but
bread,
but I still break bread with them, and but those 10% will kind of sway me a
yeah.
little bit. And,
Oh
like,
yeah.
so it'll make me just to push me to the center a little bit with some of their principles. But, like, yeah, it's just I think more people just get stuck in these silos
Yeah.
where they only hear the same thing, and then when you get stuck in the silos, then it just keeps going to your far right or your far left because it's just you're in this, what is it, echo chamber it's called?
Think it was Jay Shetty or some, but I don't know, some podcast I was listening to. He's like, we are exposed in one day to as much news media and content as the average American was exposed in their entire lifetime 20 years ago.
Yeah.
In one day, their entire life.
You have to manipulate your algorithms.
Yeah.
People really, go on social media and they click on the same thing, so you're gonna keep getting those same things. They know you're left leaning, they know you're right leaning. You're gonna get that type of dragging. Like, for me, I have, like, I don't know, 6 Instagram accounts.
Oh,
And
that's
so if
smart.
I want to learn AI,
Yeah.
all I do is search AI. If I want to learn about foreign media, all I do is follow things here. If I want to learn about an opposite perspective of my opinion, I follow and I go to different web pages just to see what they're putting out, and so I can understand of where their principles and points are. So you can really, like, the algorithm can screw you, but like 90 it screws 95% of the people. But if you use it in a smart way, you could really use knowledge. I mean, it's insane of just if I want to learn a topic, I can learn it so quick because I'll manipulate it, right? And so
Mm,
really learning the basics of being able to teach yourself anything. And so by monitoring and doing these things is like really you can teach yourself anything that you want if you really put this algorithm in the right spot.
yeah, man. Self learning is such an important attribute for entrepreneurs too.
Yeah.
So I initially heard about you when you came to Utah for an award that our mutual friend put together, Paul Hutchinson, the Hidden Heroes Award.
Yeah.
And that's the first I heard of you, right? I learned about who you are. You're the real deal in this world. The people that know you have nothing but good things to say about you. So at this event, you were on a panel, right?
Yeah.
So it was like the premiere of Sound of Freedom movie. It was a really cool award ceremony for all the hidden heroes that were involved in this undercover work. There's one thing that was really interesting during that panel, though, that we were discussing a lot: the social media aspect, the cybersecurity aspect, the stuff that's going on, right? And now there's a term for it. It's called sextortion.
Oh yeah.
What I was going to ask you, but I want to lead into it with the story that we heard from the Attorney General, right? The Attorney General said that, with his cyber task force or with his foundation, I forget what it's called, he mentioned that there was an incident here in Utah where there was a girl who's being sexually groomed. So how it started, she was posting on social media, a young girl, right? Then this guy took a picture of her social media, either using Photoshop or a free tool, he superimposed her face on a nude body.
Yep.
Then he came in contact with her and said, "Hey, I've got this content. I've got these pics. I'm going to reach out to your dad's job. I'm going to reach out to your bishop. I'm going to reach out to all of these, whichever lever he needed it to pull to get her to send him actual nude pictures." And then that spiraled down to where then he's like, "Okay, I got this nude picture of you. Now I need you to send me a nude video of you. And
Yep.
this is a underage, this is a minor, right?" And so he kept exploiting till eventually what they do, and this is a nightmare of every parent, was they were then in communication to get that little girl to give up all of the information of when their parents were gone, all of everything that would need to come. Where do you live?
Yeah, they kidnap them.
Yep, not even kidnapped. So in this context, they would let them in, and then they would rape them on live. Like, so they would have the tech, so they'd put the camera. It would go live to a live feed,
Yeah, it's a live stream abuse.
live stream, and then they would record it, rape this kid, traffic them essentially in their own household. And this all started with kids
Yeah,
social media.
it's the one-on-one course.
This When I heard that story at this event, that I literally removed all of the pictures of my kids from all my social media history, and now we don't post any pictures of our children
Yeah.
because of that story. What's your experience with that world?
We work with it a lot.
Oh,
It goes back. There's a few cases I worked of the worst. But look, this is one of the hardest things out there. You get these centers that are in Ivory Coast that are just manipulating them. You have these pedophiles that are doing it. The worst case I ever worked on was a guy named Matthew Falder. He goes by Evil Mind. He was wanted for 5 years by NCA, which is equivalent to the FBI in UK, HSI, because we had victims in North Carolina, FBI, GCHQ. 5 years he was on the dark web and he was getting girls to kill themselves. So he had 4 girls doing the same exact tactics you were doing. He'd meet them on like Gumtree, which is the Craigslist. Then he would go through, manipulate them. And then it was, like the most horrific shit. Like he would get them to do some terrible things on camera. If they didn't, he would send it to their family, and he was. So all the 4 girls that tried, he went them. They attempted. They didn't. Thank God they survived. But then he was going for a fifth. He's like, this next one I'm going to, because we had some of the communication that he was doing. And so they brought me on to work it. And this is like one of my first years when we had the Sentinel Foundation. And yeah, like we got the whole case file. Like I read every single email of this guy and how he manipulated going through. And I went old school, like plotting. Like I had to figure out where he was in the world first. So based on communication, weekends, times, like when he would communicate based on it. So you do a lot of profiling. So profile, then I read through every single email, and then like we were looking at like partnering with some major hackers to do 0-day attacks on the operating systems he was working. And I mean, nothing is off the tail with us. Everything's legal though. You know what I mean? Like we make sure we do something, we give it to law enforcement that they can use it against it, and they do the arrest. You're just like a hybrid support. Like law enforcement can hire anyone to help them advise. We just do it for free. So we advise them on this case. And
I
then
don't think anybody would be opposed to you not following the rules
oh
when it
yeah, yeah.
comes to this
Oh,
shit.
my
You know what
left
I mean?
limits don't get arrested. There's been a few times. There's been push the limits as best you can, but also due process is because if you do something illegal, you potentially throw the whole case out, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to follow that line. But we did it. I can't say exactly what the thing is, and I don't know if it fully what we provided. All I know is this: after we provided the information that we found, 3 months later, he was captured. And he got the largest sentence in UK history. Like that's like the top tier that you're seeing. We had a guy, one of our operators, a buddy that works with him, his 14-year-old girl was manipulated online, kidnapped. Like I called my partner nonprofit, NCTPF, National Center for Protecting Children Task Force. They are a guy named Kevin Branzetti, absolute studs for in the US side. And so we partnered with them. We're like, hey, here's the information. They did, found the girl in 4 hours. 4 hours on the objective. Because the cops, you have to understand these cops, like, they mean well. They don't know how to like work the system so they can get the subpoena back in 15 minutes. Or like if Facebook is trying to go, like a cop is trying to go to Facebook, they might not have that direct. If it's a small town, they might not have that direct contact, and then they have to go. So by having these nonprofits, and we're working on it too, is standing up a Sentinel task force in the US right now where we can enhance their cyber capabilities immediately. So they can call us and say, and that's what NCPT is, they call them and they're on objective in 4 hours. This guy had done exactly that, manipulated her, had her delete her phone, everything like that. Luckily, they got some artifacts back, found out what platform they were communicating on, and then I can't say exactly what, but then they were able to locate where he was. He's done this to, like, 7 other girls. Went in, kicked in the door, and rescued the girl. You know, like,
Wow.
that's like law enforcement, right?
Yep.
It's just we're just there to streamline the process. Somebody calls me, it's not Glenn's this, like I said, Messiah. It's I know somebody probably. You know, like our CTO, really good friend of mine, Ryan Montgomery, he did a 0 day for Sean Ryan, one of the best hackers in the world. Like, I have him as a resource to be like, "Yo, Ryan, what about this? What about that? You know, like, what can we get for data for this?" And then he brings his wealth of his community. So it's kind of like crowdsourcing, but in a private way where we're not tipping to law enforcement or anything like that. It's all people that are trusted and for it. So yeah, it's extortion is the worst, man. We're trying to take down, there's centers over in different countries like Ivory Coast and other West African countries. You got guys locally, how they're doing it. We're looking at, Roblox. We know they're all on Roblox. We're analyzing that to try to see how they're manipulating our kids.
Yeah,
Like right
it's
now, I got teams undercover all over Roblox that they're pulling out these little chat systems that they're trying to get these young girls. And so it's just basically little honeypots where they'll come in and then we'll get them, then we'll pass it to law enforcement. I'm not a believer in the vigilante. We're not doing any vigilante. Like
yep,
it's very minimal touch, is
yep.
because then we pass it to law enforcement, they take it over.
Humanitarian, just like kind of special cases like the Afghanistan operation. I mean, what you're doing, man, is very, you're a hero.
We
And
don't like that word.
yeah, okay.
I mean, like it's just
Yeah.
self service, right? Like you'll be surprised of how well you sleep at night when you just help other people,
Right.
right? Like
So what I know a lot of people are thinking, we've heard what happened in Afghanistan. We've heard a little bit about the humanitarian uh op. What's give them a peek inside what you know a trafficking or a human trafficking operation looks like, and you can share whichever one comes to mind.
our focus and our mission is to create as much fear in the market,
Mhm.
right? Like you look at India, like I told you before, is like 18 dudes gang raping a young child, right? And it's crazy. The people stood up, rose up, million people marched, and this is what they put death sentence over overnight. They went away, right?
Yep.
And you know what I mean? Like, and so for us is we have to create fear that they're being hunted. We have to create fear that they have a chance of getting arrested while they're doing these things. And so with Bangladesh, that was a case. Where DARPA created this program called Memex. I won't get into detail, but we had a lot of information from the dark web from these certain forums. While up in DC, they're like, "Hey, let me show you what we have going on." I'm like, "All right, I'll hear what you have to say." They want a guy to go on the ground. That's what they said. I'm like, "All right, show me what you got." So they show me what I got, and they're like, "Yeah, this is this individual is, instead of having sex with kids, bring your own kid back home to the U.S. and have sex every day with them. So you're not paying for him, so you have your own little sex slave." And he gave a very detailed thing on multiple forums. He was a guy of knowledge, and it was very detailed and intimate. So I was like, man, it looks like there's something with this potentially. And so for us to be able to go and look at it, I was like, all right, where's this at? They're like Bangladesh. I'm like, all right, let's go. Like probably should have done some research because I was like I was not up on Bangladesh. I was not up on the Rohingya refugee crisis. So it was cool though, but BBC put me on as like a J visa, like put me as a journalist for like a day or like 16 days while I was there. And so Bangladesh didn't know I was investigating, US didn't know I was investigating, and then had to get on the ground. And so I got on the ground, I go to, and it's like 400,000, 500,000, and 100,000 of the camp sizes of these refugee camps. And so I just start walking through and started talking to people with the one reporter.
Mhm.
It's kind of like behind the scenes, he's funding things and stuff like that. So we do that. And quickly I realized that dude, there's two ways we could have done the operation where I basically create like a CTR vehicle, a vehicle that's broken down that I could capture footage. If you have a choke point, you can do this. People coming and going, low light cameras. And I was like, that's not happening. It is just absolute chaos, man. Like lowest level of poverty is going to a refugee camp. And these kids just like this little 3-year-olds. I'm like, dude, I could steal a kid right now and just walk right out. Like
Wow.
this is super easy.
Yeah.
And, like part of the guy I talked about, he's like, pose as an NGO, do this, and that's how you get your kids. Stay at these hotels and things like that. So it was a very
Whoa.
detailed
Yeah.
map. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to be the John now. Like, so then I'm going to have to be the person that does it. And so usually in every city, there's a fixer. There's people that can get you whatever you want. And when you're going into it, I'm not like, oh man, I really want to have sex with a kid. No, we're looking for like, hey, I want fresh. I want, different terms
Mm.
and different things so they understand like that term. So you find a guy that's offering sex. We found a hotel owner that knew a guy potentially that could get us sex. for it. And so I start working it and then manipulate the situation. I have to make sure that I'm not creating a demand. So I did a technique where I made them do an Android file transfer to me, and then I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get into details, but I was able to digitally prove for forensics that these children were actually kidnapped and they were being held, and they were, reports that they're in cages and things. And so I had everything from I said like a 13 to a 15-year-old. I had three of them, and they malnourished these girls, so they look even younger. These girls look like 9 to 11, like super young in this picture, and I'm like, well, all right, let's just roll this and see what happens. And so I was supposed to go into where they were being held, and like, thank God that didn't happen because I don't have any backup. Police aren't involved for this yet. I'm just collecting the story because you collect the evidence and then you go to the police, right? Usually, we get 99% of the time we go in, and law enforcement welcome us. This is just a situation where they didn't want help. They had tried before and they didn't want, so we were going to collect the evidence to try to see this. And so we do this, and long story short, they agreed to do the operation. The police, we go brief the police. They agreed to do the operation. So I rented out like this penthouse place. I had it all set up like Chris Hansen to Catch a Predator. Everything is going to be good to go. I'm communicating with the trafficker. They're going to bring the girls up, and sure enough, I go in. I'm not showing what the trafficker looks like to the police until they get to the operation, because you get corruption, you get things. So I show them, and the cops like, "Oh, that's my source. We can't do this operation." I'm like, "No, you just said it on camera. You're going to do this operation." We kind of go back and forth. He's like, "All right, fine." I get a call, 5 minutes later, and Trevor's like, "Hey, I'll meet you out front in 15 minutes." And I'm like, "Oh, fuck." Like, I'm being either set up here, or like they tipped him off, or I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, he's like, "I'll meet you out front. I'm not coming to your hotel room." And so I'm like, all right. So I have like 15 minutes. I'm look on the balcony. I kind of place the police on the ground. I'm like, all right, you there, you there, you here. I'm going to stand outside with my interpreter. I'll be right in the light. So it's like, it's on the beach. It's like beach, then it's like little road, and we're at a dead end. There's a bunch of people here, and it's like lit here but dark here. And so I'm mic'd up, you know what I mean? Like, and I have money on me. This is kind of like the most dangerous part of the mission. Any mission is like, because they know I have money, right? They know I'm by myself. I'm not with a cop, right? Like, this is a chance where you could be potentially set up. But for the most part, these operations are not dangerous. It's just you can talk your way out of anything. So boom, they come through, and like you'll see when you watch the video, like this red hoodie walks by me and he's in the distance. And I just see him, and I was like, it just felt like evil. And so on mic, I'm saying like 8 o'clock red hoodie because he walked by this way. And I'm like, he's gonna button hook to me, and his hands are in his pocket. So I'm like, all right, where's my interpreter? Like, I'm like, I got somebody to push into somebody, right?
Mm.
Like, like go through it. And so he walks up and he's like, "Hey, come with me." And I'm like, no, I'm not going up there. There's like 40 dudes standing up there. And sure enough, the tuk tuk finally comes down, has two girls in it. And yeah, we go in, and sure enough, like, I go up, I pay the guy, I'm keeping him cool, calm, like, I don't entrap him, but I get him to show that he's not just a driver. So I said, like, "Hey, if tonight's good, can we get more?" And he's like, "Yeah, yeah." So he's part of it. I gave him a tip, so I paid him for his services for bringing it down there. But just, you'll need these things in court of law, if it's gonna go to that level. So they do it. I grab the girls, cop button hooks around, arrest him right there. And, like, then it's like this, so it wound up being a 15-year-old and a 21-year-old, and it goes back when I first interviewed a lot of the girls that were trafficked before, because I found out how they happened. It was like, "Hey, a woman recruited me, to go to get a job. They took me to a hotel room." So all these different points, and so I'm sitting there, and the 15-year-old at first was, like, crying and just happy. It's
Mm.
a very emotional moment when you rescue that child, and, then I go and I take it, I'm gonna get them milkshakes, and we're gonna eat dinner, all these things, and we're just hanging out, and then I look over, and the 21-year-old just, like texting like crazy, smiling. She's eating everything. The 15-year-old girl is like, damn, like you could just see like a disappointment. I'm like, what is going on here? So I snatch up the phone from the 21-year-old. I get my interpreter. She had given my whole description and everything. She was a trafficker herself, right there in the mix. And so we had to get her arrested. We had to bring the cops back. She was like kicking out the windshield of the BBC bus. Like, oh, we like citizen arrest her. Like,
Oh, shit.
yeah, locked her up. And
Yeah.
then, yeah. So then the 50-year-old, now we can't do an operation unless we have aftercare set up. So we've had a partner nonprofit then to give her a new life for this, right? So, and you look at it and it's like, did you make the difference? But it was more of like changing that life for one child at a time mentality. And then, it got elevated to the parliament level at the UK government because of this to show trafficking. So it was the first time a child was bought on camera from a trafficker. So not only did it give main stage attention, it also gave doubt to the traffickers that next foreigner that's trying to buy, he could be an undercover
Wow.
agent. So
Yeah,
you place seed of doubt into their comfort.
that's good, and that's necessary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what we try to do.
Mhm,
Like we could have a ton more rescues. Like I don't we don't do the whole sex party thing that you see
mhm.
going down is because if I took $5,000 into Haiti and I said, "Hey, give me some kids, give me 13 kids," I will have 14 kids in 3 hours. That child is not trafficked, right? Like they weren't trafficked. And like you see that. Yeah, were a lot of kids rescued in some of these techniques? They sure were, but they are it's a gray area. And for me is like our preference is going after the head of the snake, like infiltrating his network, seeing what they have. You kind of like touch and go, get out, infiltrate them, and then take them out. Yeah, we like the lightning strikes, the big bangs that we try to do.
And is that the gray area? Is that whether you're causing the traffic? Like
Correct.
you're, yeah,
Yeah,
that's the gray area.
that's why I started. One of the reasons I don't I don't throw any hate. You know what I mean? I don't like doing those things just because I'm not sure if that child was trafficked. If I take a lump sum money
Yep.
and I put it into an economy with no money, I can get anything I want in any country. So we balance that. Like police will come to us with high profile cases like they can't solve. Like that's one of our bread and butters. Like there's cold cases where this dude that thinks he's impossible. I love that because I won't sleep. We will do everything on our until now. Like I'm on my third internship of like we've trained in our skill sets, like me and Ryan and a few other people that are really good at this. We're on our third intern class that just started yesterday. We had 200 applicants in like a week for this like cyber internship, OSINT, and we have 16 students now. We take everyone. Women are leading hands down. Like each one of our winners are like we have people with a ton of military experience, government, and like analytical work, and then it's like a stay-at-home mom that came through. Like actually, my wife won the second class. Like we put her in as disguise in there.
Uh,
She was always good, man, because I'd be in foreign countries and she was like stalking and finding out where I'm at. I'm like, yo, how did you figure that out? And so I
yeah,
was
they're the
like,
best. Women are the best of that. So.
like I put her in the class. And then she won. I'm like, okay, this is something. It wasn't because she was my wife. The first
Mhm.
class too was somebody with no experience. Now she was a double MIT major. Like so. Yeah. And so the third class, we're recruited heavy from like stay at home moms and people like that that can like really stalk online because
Yeah.
if I can take them and I can put them into this fight.
Mhm.
Like it's incredible what they could do, and so we're perfecting that right now. We have a mix of like we have some operators, we have some stay-at-home moms, we have some intel analysts. We kind of bring together, and they're getting after it. But like, yeah, I never doubted a scorned woman, or a
Yeah.
curious woman. Yeah,
That's
like
interesting, bro. That
yeah,
reminds me of
yeah,
that book Talent Code where like they try to figure out like why is the Dominican Republic, why do they have all-star major league baseball players? What is it about this little
yeah,
country, or like why are there hot spots of talent in these different parts of the
yeah.
world that, the per capita is significantly less,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Why are there more per capita MLB superstars out of the Dominican versus the United States?
yeah,
Like it's crazy. And so they figure it out and they see and they go do it. That's what it sounds like.
yeah. And it's like I was the guy teaching this. Like I was kind of
Yeah.
one of the first. A guy named Mike Basil was doing it first, and then he trained me up for it, and then I started doing it, and yeah, like they were talking. I think my wife and one of her friends was talking about like how they knew that somebody was divorced because he stopped wearing a wedding ring on this date, and like they're going through separate. I'm like, yo, like I was doing that against ISIS, like I'm looking at like pedophiles, like that's
Yeah.
exactly. I'm like, and then it hit me. I'm like, oh, like hold on a second, like let's throw all stereotypes out, like let's
Yeah.
throw all degrees out, let's take people because like I self taught myself, like I was motivated because I knew a kid was in danger and this is a case I was which when I really like then started getting really good at this was I was in teaching in Quito, Ecuador,
Mhm.
and live in class we had a lead come in from a Facebook child sexual abuse material where this guy was raping a super young girl, and we had two accounts, and on those accounts there was no child. And so I had to go through, but we had background images. We had that thing. They desanitized some of it, and so I went through and I stopped class and I said, "Look, all we're going to do this live right now. Let's see what we're worth." 3 hours later, I found her, matched her teach up for it. That night, they went out, arrested them, and it was like these techniques work. This is back in I think 15 too, 2015 or 2016. Yeah, and I was like, "Dude, this is crazy." Like, live in class and, like, to see that right there, and it was just that grinding, like, going through and looking at every picture and looking for that one colored wall. It was like a green wall. Then I found the green wall, and it was like a cousin. So then I knew, like, had to be a family member, so, like, I was going through their friends and, like, typing everybody with the same last name. Because Spanish names are hard sometimes. Sometimes they're, like, 5.
Yep.
You get, like, a
Yep.
ton of, like, Burgess Lopez's or Juan Jose, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, you get, like
And they're made in it.
exactly. So I found the relative, and I was like, it has to be a relative because they're not nowhere on their page. And I found one post of that guy with this greenback wall, and I was like, oh, that's it. And so then I found the woman that was at that thing, and I went through all of her pages, and I was just stalking. Like, I'm like a worse scoring woman. Like when I'm hungry, like going through like I was really creative, like
Yeah.
for this. I've had corporate companies try to hire me to do this. Like I have people try to reach me for TV shows.
Yep.
And I do what I do with like this, like it's pretty much like Don't Fuck with Cats, the TV show. It's like that's what I'm really good at, or I was like really good at. And so it's like once you get that motivation, like that's why I can't like banks have tried to hire me and things like that to do. I'm like, it's not motivating because you have to be motivated to do this work. Child's in danger, kids are dying or kidnapped, things like that. That is motivation. That's where you're like, I'm not going to stop. I've read for 18 hours straight a Portuguese forum to find that one little needle inside of all the needles that's led to the case that led to the rescue of the child.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it
Wow.
takes tenacity and dedication to really go through it. And yeah, I don't like quitting, you know? It's like you
Yeah.
don't like and we're on our cyber side, we were pretty high, close I don't wanna say fully 100%, but it's damn near up there with how talented we are. Because once you know the system, you know where to go and find the data and information and go after it, so
And that so if somebody wants to learn that, you guys have
yeah, next internship will probably be in April, May, June, sometime. It depends on this class. This is our largest class of 15, so it's they may get pushed back. But if somebody has a skill set already, they can apply at info at foundationsentinel.org with their skill set. You can reach out to my Instagram, Glenn.devitt, GLENN.devitt, DEVITT. Reach out to me directly. I'll try to get back to you. I do get a lot of like mail for it, but yeah, I'll send you to the right people.
you were uniquely have been cultivating a skill set for a program that you working on for predictive analytic on individuals that are more likely to commit suicide. What's that about?
Yeah, so back in COVID, like kind of like pre-COVID, I was approached, and I've worked for the U.S. government, and I've worked on very complex problem sets of using data to solve them. Like they would bring me in to consult on certain things at a very high level, and I got a call from a guy that had just went to a meeting in D.C. that is the CEO of an organization called Stop Soldier Suicide. And he's like, "Hey, I got your number from DC. These guys told me to give you a call that you might have some ideas on using technology to prevent suicide." And for me, I was like, "Oh, thanks, cool. I'm not busy. You know, we should we should like go and do something."
Right.
But like, it was more of, my best friend killed himself like 1 month after we got back from deployment. Like we spent every Monday eating lunch together. Andrew Tallman, like writing a eulogy at 21. It's 22, something like that. I was at. It was hard. It rocked me. And now I've had 5 friends kill themselves. We just had
Wow.
it. Yeah, like it's insane, and the numbers just keep going
They
up.
all veteran?
Yeah. Yeah, all veterans, all buddies I served with to some capacity. Um, and so they approached me and they're like, "Hey, how would you go about this?" And so I was like, "Give me a week. Let me like think about this." And I have whiteboards everywhere. Like just painting out. And I started like you try to break it down to the most basic level and do research like what's being done. And like all the program out there were like, "Oh, let's analyze social media and all these things." And looked at it, and I have some friends that didn't kill themselves, and I've helped financially, or I help like get them on their feet. They just need that little nudge, and I was able to like they call me up and I'm like, "Yo, yeah, I'm there for you. I'll
Yeah.
drop everything I'm doing. I'll fly to you. I got you." Because I was down that path. I almost killed myself. If I wasn't a single dad, I probably would have. You know what I mean? Like I think we all go through that trauma stage in our life where you just don't realize that all you're doing is pushing the pain,
Mhm.
right? Like you're pushing this pain onto your family ones and your loved ones. For me, it's a very selfish act. It gives you that peace, but it hurts everybody else and for your peace. And so that's why I never really gave it an idea or never gave it grounds to run on as best I could. And so I'm looking at this problems and I'm looking at these people and I'm like, you know what? Like that person I helped out was posting, "Hey, call a buddy on Facebook. Here's a 1-800 number, call a buddy." I was like, wait a minute, there's something off here. Their inward persona and their outward persona are not the same. Outward persona is telling people to call a buddy. That's a call for help. That was saying to call them. And I was
Wow.
like, "Oh, shit, okay, okay. So this is a little first piece." Then, from doing digital forensics for Homeland Security, when I was investigating a pedophile, I was like, it's like you're in the mind of the person. Yeah, like I could see every intimate message. I could see everything they're going to. I could really understand of who you are from a level that is more than I can ever
Yep.
understand from here. And Elon Musk said that your cell phone is your fifth limb,
Right.
right? Like, you're so connected with it; it's part of your body. And, I have a forensic background and I realized that security, so cell phones, my security hacking forensic side, I knew that a cell phone was only secure for probably about 6 months. Then patches happen, operating systems get updated. Why do they get updated? Because there's back doors into the system.
Interesting.
And so there's a security thing where eventually we'll be able to get in everyone's cell phone if they're dead long enough. And I realized that all these soldiers that are killing themselves are leaving their cell phones to their next of kin. They are the guardians of their data
Wow.
after their death.
Yeah.
Now, not an easy project.
No.
So
No.
I go and I present it to them, and they're like, "Wow, this is ingenious." So like, let's do it. I'm like, all right, we're gonna fund this. Like, well, we don't have a lot of funding to put behind this. So like we bootstrapped it pretty much. I was like, all right, fine. I was like, bring me over to your CTO. Just give me some runway so I can have I have to stop doing all my other
The
projects.
CTO of Amazon.
No, it's
Oh,
Stop Soldier Suicide. No, I
okay.
wish. It's an organization called Stop Soldier Suicide. And
Uh-huh.
so I started, and like I had some old equipment, done it, and then I reached out to like my network of all my forensic people, and I was like, hey, I got this idea project. I need to get a hold of Cellbrite and Magnet Forensics. And I got a direct line into both CEOs. Both CEOs were like, "We love the project. We'll donate the software." This is like $150,000 worth of software. Donate it to me during COVID. I'm in my office, my third floor. I have an office, and I set up a forensic lab. So, and I did this all within like 3 weeks. I go back to the CEO and I'm like, "Yo, we're good." He's like, "What?" He's like, "We had planned like 4 months for you to like figure out." I'm like, "Dude, everyone's in. I got all the equipment. I got everything. Like bootstrapped it." So minimal budget. I think they bought like a computer monitor or computer. They bought like a $3,000 computer. That was it. And so I got everything else donated. Now we have the hard part. You have to get the devices. So I'm like, "Hey, I talked to Chris Ford. He's the CEO. He's a great dude." And I'm like, "Hey, you got somebody who's gonna go get these devices, right? Like you're gonna contact. They have a huge following. You reach out. They're like, yeah, you gotta do that too." I'm like, "Oh shit." I'm like, "I gotta go find these families." They're like, "Yeah." So I start doing my stalking. I start scouring like Facebook. See, like
Dang.
all these skill sets I built.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
almost
bro.
like a Slumdog Millionaire.
Yeah.
Like
Okay, yeah, yeah.
all the different pieces that led up to the end to put the whole thing together. It was like
Yeah.
my whole career was meant for this project. And so, sure enough, I'm like, all right. Well, I start going on. The first guy I met with, they're like, nah, we can't, violation. And then I got better with my pitch, and I like became like family with these people. Like I'd walk into these households, man, and it's like I challenge anybody that is on the brink of suicide to go meet a family that's had somebody commit suicide because they are struggling so hard. Like the son is now suicidal, the parents are suicidal, the brother's suicidal. Like you put this dark cloud over your family, right? And there's a sign on the Golden State Bridge that I said earlier that was there and it said you're only pushing the blame. And as you're pushing that pain, you're only pushing the pain onto these family members. And so I'm going through and like, man, I'm leaving in tears. Every one of them, and they're agreeing to these vices. I try to label it, and it's like it just breaks my heart for these families. It's like them like organ donating, you know what I mean? Like to give it back to them, and it breaks for them, man. There's some great families out there that like I went on fishing trips. I go golfing, like I'm going like I was supposed to go on a golf trip with one of the dads, and I think we were late because I'm right around the same age as a lot of their sons, for it. And so you build these. We do a golf tournament for them. We do other things for the first five that believed in the project that got behind it. Because then I went through manually and did forensics, and it is tragic, man. When you read the last second, the last year of life of you see it, the trend, you see it's going on, and you see that, and then boom, kills himself. Then you see the passages from the parents, the brother, the sister saying, "No, get a hold of you, like we're here for you," and it's too late. Like one of the guys like took the most beautiful picture of himself right before he jumped off and killed himself. And I have that photo, and I'm like, I don't know if I should share it with the dad, or would that bring back trauma? Will it be a trigger? Things like that. And so it was like, I was like, man, this project is so important to me.
Yeah.
So I kind of, because I wasn't working undercover during COVID, wasn't traveling, wasn't doing defense things. So I did that, and I kept going to these families, these households, and got five. Now we're up to like 78 phones. And now I had to go through. And, like, we started building tools, we start going through, and then, like, Amazon caught wind after, like, the first 6 months. They were like, "Hey, what are you guys working on? We wanna" they were gonna give us, like, a $25,000, like, credit grant for something we did, and we told them about Black Box. They're like, "Yo, what's that?" And I told them about it, they're like, "We're in." Like, so Amazon got it behind it, and that was validation. For the first year, it was like, man, people were telling me, no, it's a violation, but I knew that this was innovative. No innovation has been in the suicide fight whatsoever. I just didn't give up. I was like, whatever, you're an idiot. You're dumb. You don't know what I know. I know that this is going to be a game changer. I was like, how can you figure out how to solve the problem if you don't know what happened?
Yeah.
Right. And so we call it the black box project. A guy named Chuck came up with a great name, former pilot for helicopters. He's like, oh, it's like a black box. He's like, you put it in airplanes. They had no idea how planes were crashing until they put a black box. Right, and so if, like, we need to create the black box to understand what's going on, how'd that plane crash, why'd it go down? And I started seeing insights when I started going through manually, like, reading all these text messages. They were like and then you interview the families too, and they were like, "Yeah, he was buying a car, he was buying a house, he was looking forward to it." Well, I recovered his suicide note 3 months prior. Right? And it's tragic. A lot of you're seeing people that are in that kill themselves is because if they go get help, then they lose their clearance. And if they lose their clearance, they lose their career. And so it's just easier to kill themselves. Then you see failures in the VA that like 3 out of the first 5 went to the VA that day to get help and were turned away, and then they killed themselves. So not only are we able to take accountability because we have the data, and we're the only project that's doing this, right? We're also then able to prevent and predict. We're already seeing we created our own sleep algorithm. So we identified it on multiple different factors. I don't want to get into the science of it. Using an Amazon machine learning ProServe team. We have the best machine learners we paid for to come in and analyze the data. So we created a sleep algorithm automatically identifying sleep deprivation, one of the leading causes, right? Not sleeping on their phone late, not really getting the 7 to 8 hours of sleep they need. They're getting 2, 3, 4 hours of sleep, like which is not sustainable. And then they're isolating. They're pulling away. You start seeing if you go back through and look at all their friends and people that killed themselves, they either right sleep deprived, they have isolation, anger, aggression, alcohol,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
They go into it. This is like the recipe for disaster. If you see any one of your friends that are going through this, and you're starting to see these signs, you need to take them. You need to take them to the gym so they get tired, right?
Right.
Burn that energy off. That's how we know it's going to do it, right? We know things like that. Take them on a trip. Take them on a boys' trip. Point of like break the cycle,
Yes.
break the cycle of isolation, depravity, like where you're at in your environment. It's always worse than it seems, right? And tomorrow can always be better than what today is, right? And so, like I know there's a lot of people out there that are on that brink of thinking about it. I say, think of your loved ones first, right? And know that you're going to throw away a chance of happiness because it's going to happen. It's just cycles. It's ups and downs. I know in my career that I'm at peaks and I have lows. I had 2023 was the year that almost killed me, right? It was one of my hardest years of life, and I just know I had to just weather the storm and get back up. And like, hopefully, I hit that peak again. Like, and just I'm always looking. I know that that slope's coming, and
Yep.
you're going to go down. It's just riding the waves and
Mhm.
making the best of the waves you can, right? So they say veterans, you either go to the bottle, or you go to the Bible.
Wow.
For me, the Bible has been like that was my deciding factor. Turn. It's like, I have an anti-hangover company, Alcohol Armor, but I don't even really drink anymore. Like I've drank one time in the past 4 months. It's like I just know that I worked so many years undercover, and that person that I was undercover like comes out when I start drinking.
Yeah.
And for me, I can't have that person because I'm a savage, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
be like,
Yeah. You have to be.
like you have to be in those environments. They don't
Yeah.
like they say is like you don't get good intel from good people. Like soccer moms don't make good snitches. Now I didn't do anything. Like I'm rescuing kids here, but like you are just the moth to the flame. You're the dark in that world, and so yeah, I think it's just like it's really helped to find that outlet. And I think like
Yeah.
the Bible is one of the best things that's helped me in those low times of going through. There's a lot of great wisdom in that book that can really help you get out of those slumps. So,
Well, you are a shining example of somebody who has gone through life and then pinpointed the things that you can get truly passionate about. Like your soul is on fire with everything you're doing.
everyone says like they don't care how they're remembered. Like I disagree. I think of your legacy. If you have children, especially, like what do you want to be remembered for?
Yeah.
You're not going to be remembered for how good your company was. You're not going to be remembered for how much money you made. You're going to be remembered for your compassion,
Yeah.
right? You're gonna be remembered for giving that little nudge to that some person. That person's not gonna forget you if you give them that life, right? And giving is selfish. I feel like in my eyes, for me, like helping somebody makes me feel better, right? It's almost like a selfish act, but it's also beneficial to them. It's a
Mhm.
byproduct. Is my selfishness of helping them because it makes me feel good is a byproduct to raise them up, right? And so I think if you can live by this, and you're not perfect, right? But I really believe if like if you sit down and you look right now, what are you going to be remembered for? Because you're going to be forgotten in 5 years. You're probably going to be forgotten in 2 years. It's a reality. But like what your kids see. Like when I was working undercover, I had no fear. I had no fear. It's not because it's like I'm not fearless, but like I guess you would say is like I didn't care. The fear didn't overwhelm me. Is because I'm like, dude, fuck, something happened. My kids are gonna remember this. That is what I want them to know. Like I was remembered for doing this, for helping others. Like, my dad instilled that. Like I had no idea why I started working in this world and doing nonprofits. Like, well, my dad had me scrubbing graffiti in inner city Philly. He had me helping out ex convicts. He had me volunteering in all these different places. He built that into me, and I didn't realize later in my life of like that's where it instilled from. Is like just help others. Like everyone's always angling for themselves. All these influencers, everyone's a self coach and help coach. Like go out and help others, right? And just really give selfless service,
Yeah.
for it. So I think that is. I try to stay that humble, and I hope that I keep, and I don't have an ego, and it doesn't grow that way. And like I think it does. Egos come and go, and I'm just like I get off course, and you just got to get back on course for it. So
Yeah, powerful word. Thank you for sharing that.
appreciate it, brother.
Where can people find you?
For Sentinel Foundations, if you want to donate, so sentineldonations.org, sentineldonations.org. You can go to foundationsentinel.org is our website. It has more information about who we are. My Instagram, if you want to get a hold of me personally, my Instagram is glenn.devitt, GLENN.devitt, DEV, V as in Victor, ITT. And then, if you want to see any of the podcasts I've done, you can go to my Linktree. It's Linktree, Glenn Devitt, all one word for that side. So.
Sweet, man. Thanks again for coming on. And thank you guys for tuning in today. Please share, like, subscribe if you're not subscribed. This is a really powerful episode. I think more people need to hear this man's story. He's a shining example of what we all strive to be in this life, to be of service and truly impact the world and leave this place better than we found it. Until next time, guys, peace.